Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm Jason Elkins, and we've got another Jason with us here on the show. We've got Jason Halberstadt. Jason is the founder and CEO of MyTrip.AI. There's a bunch of things that he's been involved with and still is involved with, but we're going to discuss a lot about himself as well as MyTrip.AI. So, Jason, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks so much, Jason. I appreciate it. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's just the two of us, so we won't get too confused about which Jason is, speaking or which Jason is receiving questions. So it's just the two of us. So happy to have you here. You and I have had some conversations in the past about your business and kind of what you're doing and different ways that you help tour operators. I would say specifically in the kind of small cruise, adventure travel, whatever. I'll ask you, what genre, when you meet somebody, what niche do you tell people that you work with?
Yeah, I usually tell that we're into travel marketing and technology. That's what we do. That tends to encompass most of the things that we do. Really, I started out 27 years ago with by moving here to Ecuador, actually. And my idea here in Ecuador when I first came was to start a tour operator, because I came off of being a guide or technically an outward bound instructor.
Good.
The previous years. And
Very cool.
So that was an amazing experience. And so I arrived to Quito, and my idea was to start a kind of ecological adventure travel company. And this is 1997. The internet was just starting up, and I was walking around Quito, and at that time there were dozens, if not hundreds, of tour operators that had little storefronts on the street, which is something you don't see much anymore. Everything's online, and so at that point I decided that maybe a better idea, instead of competing against all these established businesses, would be to offer them internet services, because it was the very beginning of the internet, especially down here, and so my first clients, I went around explaining what the internet was, that computers can talk with each other, and email you don't have to send a fax, now you can send email. So I kind of started off in the very early days of the internet down here in Ecuador. And actually, I'm calling in from Quito, Ecuador, today.
Yeah. It sounds like you kind of hit it at a pretty good time, actually. Hear a lot of talk about it. You got to get in kind of at the right time, and you showing up there right at the beginning, it probably made a lot of sense, because they'd been around for a while doing some of their stuff, their traditional ways, and you came in right at that time when the internet was kind of getting started, and it sounds like you had some skills in that. I want to go a little bit further back, Jason, because I really want to get into how did you get from where you were to where you are now. We discussed briefly a little bit of it, but I want to go back a little further, as far back as you think we need to go. What's that moment? Was there a moment in your past where you had that aha moment, like, I want to be a guide, an outdoor instructor, I want to do this stuff? So let's go back as far as you think we need to go and help us understand what made you go this route.
Yeah, I think I kind of fell in love with traveling on 2 wheels, on a bicycle, because when I was young, I was a competitive cyclist. Actually, I started off really young, like at 9 and 10, I grew up in the Midwest. And so I did RAGBRAI, which is this famous bicycle ride that goes across Iowa. There are tens or hundreds of thousands of people that do it every year. And so, yeah, starting at nine years old, I started doing that. And then
what's it called?
Yeah, RAGBRAI.
RAGBRAI.
RAGBRAI. Yeah. Yeah. It's an acronym, the Register's Annual Great Bike Ride Across Iowa.
All right.
Register
Cool.
is the Des Moines Register. And so, yeah, I started off really traveling around the United States and Canada, competing, sometimes some years as many as 100 different races a year. And I visited, I think, every lower 48 state except for like Maine, on bicycle racing. And I was fortunate enough to be part of kind of a history-making team when I was a junior called the 7-Eleven team. It was the first American team to race in the Tour de France, and race and compete at a world level. And so there.
How did you get into that? What turned you on to that? I'm curious. Something with your parents, or I
just loved to ride bikes, and I guess had a bit of a knack for it and talent, and I just loved it. But
your parents must have been supportive. If you were traveling around doing all these competitive events, I imagine they must have really been involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. At 9 years old, my mom definitely took me on that one.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so that's really how I kind of fell in love with travel. I ended up doing cross country, like DC to San Francisco ride once, and then. And actually I moved to Boulder, Colorado, which is like the outside of Europe is like the capital for bicycle racing. And then, got injured and then had to, be a real student and live a real life. And so I was a biochemist and molecular biologist for several years. So that was kind of my second career. First was, cyclist, or first was cyclist, second was, a researcher, biomedical researcher. And then the company I was working on with, actually the drug that I was working on to try to get approved for use in humans didn't work, laid off 90% of the company, including me. So I took my severance check and went to Costa Rica. Just kind of escaped and decided I didn't want to, work in another lab job for the rest of my youth. Then, I landed in Costa Rica and soon after found the job as an outward bound instructor at the Costa Rica Rainforest Outward Bound School.
Wow. I'm always curious. I've already touched on it a couple of times. I'm always curious about when somebody decides to go a different direction than the norm, what friends, family think. So I'm hearing biomedical, engineering, chemistry, all this stuff. And now I got laid off, so I'm going to Costa Rica. I'm not going to go look for another lab job. I'm going to go to Costa Rica, be an outward bound instructor. What did your family think about that?
I've always been really independent.
You didn't care.
So, I'm just doing it. Like, he'll take care of himself. He'll be fine.
That's cool. Because I know sometimes some parents are very very protective and really kind of want to control and sculpture the path you go. And most of the people I speak with that are in adventure tourism, there's two schools. There's either one set of parents that are super like, oh, go do what you love, follow your dreams, follow your passion. And then the other ones that don't talk to him anymore because because you dropped out of med school or law school to go be a guide in Patagonia or something like that. So, all right. But they were, okay. Very cool. So you're in Costa Rica. How did you land the job?
I was actually just ran into the guy I replaced, the first guide at the Rainforest Outward Bound in Costa Rica on the bus, and arrived and had the job interview and got the job the next day, right off the bus, literally.
And he's the guy you replaced?
Yeah, the guy that
I think there's more of a story there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was.
He already knew he was leaving?
Resigning. Yeah, he was resigning, and he found his replacement on the bus, and it was a done deal within 24 hours.
That's cool. One of the reason I curious about the replacement part is one of the very first jobs I had in tourism. I had went to visit this place that I'd always kind of aspired to maybe living there, and I met the guy that was kind of running. I won't go into too many details in case of thing, but I met the guy that was kind of running the place, and he could not remember names to save his life. He would walk up and start a conversation with you, calling you the wrong name. And we were there for a week. And by the end of the week, I saw an opportunity. I was like, I don't think this guy's going to last very long. So I went to the owner of the place and said, hey, if things don't work out with so-and-so, love to come back and work with you. And I think it was a few weeks later I got the call. So yeah. Anyway, your story was different. You met this guy on the bus. You had an interview the next day. And what was the job actually like? I mean, how did that start out? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was taking groups of mostly high school students and then later university students on trips. The typical trip was like a 10-day to 2-week trip where we would do a combination of trekking. We'd usually start off up in the mountains. And first night we went through this really, really rainy cloud forest. And we usually slept the first night like in mud puddles and stuff, camping to, inaugurate the kids in the rainforest. And then we walked through the rainforest for several days. And we usually actually stop and stay with families that had really, really remote farms. And so a lot of the experience was really a cultural experience where, these suburban kids from the U.S. and Canada, they're walking for 3 days and all of a sudden they arrive to this house that's, a little family that's completely self-sufficient, lives off the land. And so a lot of it was about, those kinds of experiences. And in some ways in Outward Bound, that was, somewhat innovative. Ironically, Costa Rica Outward Bound and New York City Outward Bound were kind of the innovators in the cultural aspect of taking people out of their comfort zones culturally, not only, an adventure, but it's by having a cultural experience that, for example, one family that we stayed with, they had 18 children that lived off the land. A few of the kids were already, off and had their own families. And the youngest one was still, breastfeeding and a toddler running around. And so, I kind of entered into tourism, through those types of experiences where I think we really made some significant impacts on the lives of the kids. Really, open.
I would think so. I've got a lot of questions about this. First, though, prior to getting that job, what I've heard so far was a lot of experience bicycling, traveling around the lower 48, and then working in a lab, doing the research and school. What do you think it was that you brought to the interview that they hired you? Had you traveled? Had you been in a rainforest before you got to Costa Rica and got this job? Was there something about your unique skill set that was ideal for the job, or was it just like, hey, we need somebody, you're a smart guy, so you'll figure it out? Yeah,
I spoke some Spanish,
okay.
and I had quite a bit of experience, like backpacking and rock climbing and of course bicycling, and so, but I did have to learn, whitewater rafting and kayaking and all kinds of new bungee jumping as well as one that we did that was kind of in Outward Bound hadn't really done before.
What was the biggest challenge, maybe with the kids you mentioned, mostly high school kids and maybe some of the older college kids? What was the biggest maybe challenge that you would not have expected, or someone that's listening to the show that thinks, oh, I'd love to be an Outward Bound guide? That just sounds so cool, or any type of guide. But I mean, what was the biggest surprise or the most challenging part of the job?
Yeah,
because you're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, just saying. Yeah, it was very intense. 2 years of living out of a backpack was really, really intense, and not living anywhere. So that part of it, not being able to have a normal life, is challenging. I think it's a 24/7 job. But really, the most challenging is I think kind of the emotional situations you get in with kids. And I mean, Outward Bound is kind of traditionally known for problem kids that the parents kind of send them away to straighten them up, or so there's frequently a lot of behavioral issues. There are a lot of spoiled rich kid issues that when you get them out in the forest, they can't really deal with
I
reality.
thought this might go this direction when I asked that question. I wasn't going to put the words in your mouth, but I was curious about, that child. You weren't much older than these kids at that time, were you?
Yeah,
Mid
it's true. I
20s?
was in my mid-20s. Yeah. I was like 25, 26.
Man, I've got a couple kids, and you've been around not quite as maybe as long as I have. I don't know, but anyway, we both been around a little while, and my perception at the age of 25 about spoiled rich kids is probably, I don't know if it's changed or not, but I'm definitely a lot more patient. So I can imagine that at 25, you're just like, come on, you guys, you're only a few years younger than me. What's your problem? But I also suspect you saw some pretty amazing impacts, pretty amazing, maybe, I don't know if I want to say turnarounds, but do you remember any specific moments when you're like, man, this feels really good. I'm really helping people?
Yeah. We had this one particular case of a high school girl who, definitely had some physical disabilities, and I'm not sure if learning disabilities exactly, but she had some development disabilities. I think both of her parents were physicians and have kind of babied her and really taken care of her quite closely her entire life. And so she showed up, and obviously I had a really, really hard time keeping up with the group. And even, at lunchtime, like making the sandwich, she didn't know how to cut, doesn't know how to use. So by the second day, she was so exhausted that she was literally like passed out unconscious. And we're like, 2 days walking from a road. And, and so, we had to basically carry her. My assistant carried her. We all split up his gear and carried her. And she slept for over 24 hours at a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and woke up and had like the greatest respect of the entire group, for how far she pushed herself. And from that point on the course, she did incredibly. Everything was really difficult for her, but she pushed through. You don't have a lot of choice, Well, I guess you can pass out and get carried out. But
lucky for you, she decided to take a more proactive approach. Huh?
Yeah. And so that's it's probably one of the most rewarding, personal stories.
Do the kids, have you seen or read Lord of the Flies?
Yeah.
Seen the movie or read it?
A long time ago. Yeah.
So as I recall, kind of the concept is it's just a bunch of kids without any supervision, and they kind of things go sideways and crazy and weird. Obviously with your groups, you had some adult supervision. That was your job. But I'm curious what your perception is like when kids get in an environment like that. Do they come together more, or do you see the bullying and the kind of the cliquish stuff, or do you feel like they tend to come together and be more accepting of each other and help each other more, or do you have any kind of insights into what that's like?
Yeah. I think usually when you get people out of their environment, in this case, a school environment, and so somewhere that's completely foreign to everybody, I think a lot of the bullying and the kind of hierarchy and cliques kind of stop, and the kids tend to come together. But then there's also frequently one kid or one person in any kind of group. If you've been working in tourism for a long time and been guiding, you know what I'm talking about. That can tend to be problematic. And you have to figure out how to deal with them. And actually, one of my favorite stories is actually not with a high school student, but sometimes we would have corporate clients as well. And so once we had the entire team of the World Bank from the Central America office, or they literally flew in a helicopter to the river. Did rafting
to sleep in the mud.
So I says, no, they did no sleeping in the mud.
They didn't do okay.
They were helicoptered in and out. And we did several trust falls and some different team building activities. And that wasn't really interesting because there was the head of the World Bank was very like dominating, strict woman who really ruled with an iron fist. But then when she was with her team in another environment where she was not prepared nearly as well as like the Costa Rican workers.
The hierarchy structure kind of shifted around, did it a little bit?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And there was some mutual respect shown back to workers that don't think happened very much in that workplace.
That's fun. I've had a few conversations with people that have done that kind of the incentive or the groups, the corporate groups and stuff like that. And it's a story that I've heard a few times, and it's pretty cool. And I imagine sometimes maybe these leaders that are like, you're going to take your team out and go do this stuff out in the forest or whatever. I can imagine they probably feel a little bit anxious around that because they're used to being, their identity is tied to being the boss, being in charge and
control,
being the person that everybody looks to for what are we doing? What are we, that leadership role. And then you take them out of their element, put them in an element where maybe their executive assistant has way more experience, than they do. And they become reliant on other people on the team. It's probably a pretty cool dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't know why I want to ask this, but I'm going to ask this. Were these, the groups of the high school kids, were they usually mixed like co-ed groups, boys and girls, or was it usually only girls or a group of boys? And I'm just going to ask you, what kind of challenges did that present? Because those of us that haven't been an Outward Bound guide maybe have these ideas like you take a group of boys and girls out in the woods and you got to chaperone them, supervise them. So are there any challenges that presents that you want to discuss?
Yeah. So I think, dragging around in the mud and no showers for a week.
I was.
So maybe.
All of a sudden they don't want to get that close to each other. Like, oh, you stink.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll move right on.
Yeah. And so actually from my Outward Bound days, my very last course with Outward Bound brought me to Ecuador. I had the privilege of designing and putting together the first university course that Rainforest Outward Bound had. It was like a month in Costa Rica, a month in Ecuador, and a month in Peru. Yeah. And I was with the same people for 90 days, day and night. Definitely ended my career after that. I wanted to look for something else to do. And so I ended up landing in Quito.
Okay. And that's where we pick up where we left off a few moments ago. You ended up there and you saw these tour operators with their street front shops and some young person standing out front selling hiking trips or bicycle trips or mountain climbing trips or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you're like, man, instead of opening up a shop right next to them, I can help them figure out how to take their business to the next level. It sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I literally, went door to door to all these shops and started talking with them about what the internet was. And then, I launched a couple of websites. One's Ecuador Explorer, and that was kind of like a guide to Ecuador. And so we had links out to all the different the tour operators and travel providers. And so, really over the years, ended up helping hundreds and hundreds of small companies.
Did you see any patterns or any obvious? Because I imagine some people are very much like, oh, yep, I see it. This is what we need to do and help us do it. And then I'm sure there were others like, no, I don't think people are looking online. I don't, and I mean, because we have that in everything, right? We're going to discuss artificial intelligence here in just a moment. So this seems like an appropriate place to start is, what did you notice with these operators? You take 100 operators, you go door to door, talk to 100 of them. At that time, what were the patterns that you saw? Was it the older tour operators that had more resistance, or what did you kind of identify at that time?
Yeah, I think a lot of in Quito at that time, there were a lot of foreigners, a lot of Europeans and a couple Americans that had small travel company. And so I think they tended to be like the most receptive because they kind of understood their market back home, and the internet was going to be the way that they could most easily reach.
And they're also probably early adopters, just their nature, their personality. That's why they're living in Ecuador. That's why they moved to Ecuador and started a business. So they're open to that risk. They're not risk averse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, early adopters, risk takers, absolutely. And what else? It's mostly that attitude and a hunger to grow a business and to reach foreign markets, because that's what all tourism was about, especially in those days. It was like all receptive tourism.
Right.
Was the only game in town.
And that was about, you said 20, 25 years ago? How long ago?
Yeah, it was like 27 years ago, 97 we started.
27 years ago, you were pitching websites to people that had never seen a website.
Yep.
Or weren't that familiar with it. I mean, it was all brand new. So how do you feel now, 27 years later? Now let's jump forward to what you do now and how you help your clients basically generate more business, find more clients, find more guests to share their experiences with them. Kind of seems very similar to me as an outside observer.
Yeah, I largely do the same thing.
but now it's with AI, and there's a lot of people that have amazing websites, but the AI is like, whoa, that's something totally new. How to, I think I like my website. I've invested a lot of my money in my website, and you probably get a lot of the same objections, kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a very similar situation of, the late 90s where the internet was new and it kind of exploded in terms of use, and it was going to be the next big thing. And so, I think there's a lot of similarities between where we are now with AI and back in the early internet days. Yeah, in many different aspects. I mean, there was tons of investment that went into the first .com boom, and there was a bust. And so I kind of find myself in a similar situation of having to explain back then what a website was and what email was, is now explaining what AI is and how you can use AI to help your business.
So we're going to definitely discuss that. And for our listeners that are listening, I think this is a great opportunity for me to ask you, okay, MyTrip.AI, what is that? We don't need to, this is not going to be a great conversation about the in-depth intricacies of AI and how it all works and all that stuff. But how do you describe what you do for your clients now? Like 27 years ago, we all can imagine you need a website because people are going online looking for stuff. You need that website. Everybody now gets that. So how do you explain now what you're doing and how it can help your clients or other people? It doesn't necessarily have to be your client. There might be someone else listening out here that will never work with you, but might benefit from this. And I appreciate your graciousness to share.
Yeah, sure. What I would say is, our main flagship product that we have right now are AI assistants. And so AI assistants in the case that we're talking about now is a way that you can have a company AI, an AI for your company that understands your company, understands how you work, understands what you sell, how you sell it. And you can put this AI assistant on your website via a chat interface. And so that when somebody visits your website, you're actually greeted by someone saying, hey, can I help you plan a trip to wherever you are, or actually about the actual web page that you're on. If you're on a page about Antarctica, I want to take a trip to Antarctica. So it's a way to really quickly initiate a relationship with a potential customer via your website. Help them. Yeah, I think that is a huge part of the formula here, is that AI enables us to help people at scale and in a way that we weren't able to before at scale. Most of the companies I work with, they provide extremely personalized service. So when you go and chat with somebody on a website, you're actually chatting with a human, which is fantastic. But you can't, if you get hundreds of thousands of visitors to your website, you can't greet every single person with a human. And so it enables a tour operator or anyone selling travel to give something first, help somebody advance on planning their trip before you're asking something from them, like filling out a form with their personal data and taking the time to do that and explain what you want. We find that it's much more satisfying for many people to have a conversation, extract all the information about what my dream trip is in the form of a conversation versus filling out a form.
I'm curious because I know ChatGPT and a lot of this AI stuff really was in the forefront within the last couple of years. And I remember before that, you go on a website oftentimes and a little box would pop up and how can I help you today? And if you did engage, it was typically, please wait. Wait until we can connect you with somebody, or please give us your email address and we'll have somebody reach out to you. All of our agents are busy right now, and frankly, it was kind of a negative experience.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just curious. It feels like a lot of people they had a negative experience with that in the past. So when they go to a website now and a little box pops up and says, how can I help you today? It's like, yeah, that's a total waste of time. So they just ignore it. They close it out. They this, then that.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's a challenge you have when you're dealing with tour operators, because probably the tour operators might have some of this mindset as well. They've been on a website 3-4 years ago and they got annoyed by the little thing popping up and they just have this attitude that those things are just annoying. Do you run into that very often? And how do you address that?
Oh, sure. It's all a numbers game of,
okay.
Every 100 people that arrive to your website, how many initially engage in a conversation, how many end up, leaving their contact information and then being satisfied with the interaction. And so, yeah, definitely. There's a high percentage of people that just click the X and close the chat window. But those that do initiate a chat, we're finding that an extraordinarily high percent of people, we're talking over 60% of people that initiate a conversation, end up actually leaving their personal information. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a conversion rate that is totally unheard of in this industry. It's usually low single digit. If every 100 people that come to your website, you get 2, 3, 4 contacts. Yeah, 2, 3, 4%. And so I think the magic here is engaging someone in a conversation, offering to help someone, and then actually helping them before you ask for their contact information.
It's that trust thing, right? It's whether you're on the street doing business, maybe 27 years ago, you're walking down the street and you have a conversation with a tour operator because you want to go mountain biking. And if you just walk up and they say, give me your credit card or what's your name, what's your phone number, I'll send you some information. You got to have a little bit of a conversation and say, you know what, and provide some value. And then once you provide that value, it's like, okay, now I've got an opportunity to do business with you. So it sounds basically the same, kind of normal human nature, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the way that humanity has interacted in like 99.999% of our history, and it's really only since the internet, that we turn into form filling beings.
Because there's basic kind of like laws. Like I don't remember the guy's name, but he's a business professor, marketing professor at Arizona State University. Can't think of it right off the top of my head, but he wrote a book kind of about just outlining the different laws of law. I just remember the law of reciprocity was the one that he discussed. He didn't come up with it, but he wrote a great book. And the law of reciprocity says that if you give me something, I'll give you something, and when you become aware of these things, you see it on the street. It could be the waitress at the restaurant that, leaves a handful of candies with the check, more than you would think are reasonable. It's not one piece of chocolate per person. It might be 4 or 5 chocolates per person. And then it's like, wow, she obviously gave us more than she's supposed to or whatever. And then it's reflected in the tip. But it's also, I think, so these things actually still apply with technology. We can, people are still people, even if one of the entities having the conversation is not a person.
It's not a real person.
It still needs to behave like a person.
Yeah, no, it's really quite ironic, no, that enables us to kind of return to this old school, pre-internet sort of interactions.
Yeah, because it's really hard to give something if it's just a static website. I think websites are great. I love, but it's just static. It's hard to really give somebody something when it's not engaging. It's just sitting there. The information's there, but you got to go find it. The only way I can give you something with my website is make the navigation easy. So hopefully you'll stick around, but it's really hard to give something of value. And maybe 3-4 years ago, they'd pop up an ad or something. Oh, do something now. We'll give you 20%. But that's not tailored to a specific customer, where I think the AI gives you the opportunity to really figure out, what does the person want? Why are they here? So I can give them some of what they want, with the promise that, okay, I've given you what you want. Now let me help you let me figure out how I can give you more of what you want. So let me put you in touch with a real person. Yeah. So it's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's cool. And also, go ahead.
Oh yeah. For years and years, I've kind of framed, before AI, I've framed it, travel marketing in general is like a race to relationship. The company that is first, found by a prospective traveler and then develops a relationship with them and helps them actually advance on their traveling pattern. Yeah. Most of the time, the first company that wins that race to relationship is the one that wins the business. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's across the board. It's not just tourism.
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget, I think, as tour operators, we pride ourselves so much in our customized attention, and that everything is kind of bespoke, and we don't want to give you a cookie cutter solution. We're going to customize this for you, but they go so far that it takes a week for them to respond to a lead, or once they do respond to a lead, they're like, I don't have anything to show you because we do everything custom made. So give me an hour of your time on the phone and da, 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 da. And by that point, you've kind of already lost an opportunity a lot of times, where you're right. I think, and it's in every business. I worked in real estate for a while, and maybe this term is universal, but I remember it was the golden hour. The agent, because when people decide they're going to buy a house, they tend to just go out and Zillow it, and I like this one. I like this one. I like this one. And they end up in 14 different real estate databases. And the first agent that connects with them and provides them some value, and hey, I saw you're looking at this house. Let's go take a look at it in person. Boom. That's their agent, unless they screw it up. I remember real estate, it was, if you're going to sell your house, something like 80% of people end up listing their house with the first agent that looks at their house, the first agent that walks in the door, the first agent they meet, really is another way of saying that. And I think especially in the smaller niche adventure travel space, sometimes maybe we forget that time is important,
Absolutely. It's really a race. It's a race to developing a relationship with the traveler. And so I think the days of filling out a form of, I want to go to wherever, and then waiting 24 hours or so for a response, I think those days are numbered. Yeah.
And it would say, generally, most tour operators put it right on their form, or if they have a response email, which is even more sophisticated, then that's the next level. But it would be like, we'll get back to you within 24 to 72 hours, or 2 to 3, 1 to 2 business days, not including weekends, holidays. So the person literally, they were trying to figure out a price, or trying to figure out what will it cost for me to take my family to Galapagos. And they couldn't figure it out on the website, because we'd hide stuff, because it's all customized. It all depends on what you want to do. And then we say, fill out a form and we'll get back to you in 48 hours. And it's like, that's too much. I mean, I wouldn't sit still. I mean, I use the internet to book stuff all the time. And if I can't find the answer to my question, or feel like I'm making progress towards an answer, then I'm just going to skip. I'm on to the next place. So,
Yeah. And so what we're finding is, with these AI assistants, they greet people, immediately start to help them kind of, define what their different preferences are, who they're traveling with, why they're traveling, what do they want to see, what do they want to do. And then if you're able to, point people to specific products that you offer that match what they want, or build a custom package. The AI can recommend an itinerary, and then say, okay, but let's plan a meeting with a human trip planner to go over the details, and they'll be able to give you an exact quote and everything at that point. And so, yeah, I think it's really an enabling kind of real time at scale. Not the complete sales process or the complete customer service process, but working together with a human trip planner is the way that the customer have the best customer experience.
Yeah, because that first part of the experience, I mean, it kind of touches on what we've been discussing, but it's the first part of the experience is super critical. It's that first impression, right? So which means that the AI assistant needs to be a good one, and I've had some conversations with you about training them and making sure that that is a good first impression, because if they make that good first impression, well, it's just critical. If it's a bad first impression. I went on to, you'd sent me a sample of, sample or working demo of one of your assistants, and I was messing around with it. I was like, I'm going to see if I can trick it. And I said, I had this whole conversation about wanting to take a cruise at the Galapagos, and then at the last minute, oh yeah, by the way, my kid has autism, and I'm really worried about that. Can you, do you guys have trips that are well suited to that? I don't remember the exact response, but it blew me away. It was like, okay, and it was just like, I felt this sense of, okay, these guys, I know it's a chatbot, I know it's AI, but they did a good job creating the AI. It's working. It gave me confidence, and and it was just a very kind of a compassionate, like, hey, we understand there's challenges, and specifically mentioned a couple of them that it was really, really cool. So I don't know why I'm sharing that, but yeah, I think the training's important. Pardon me. I'm sure it's the same as it was 27 years ago, but what's the biggest obstacle when you have a conversation with a tour operator? What's the number one objection that comes up for you?
It's nowadays with these AI assistants is that we offer a personalized service. It is the number one objection that we get. But I think, just what we've been talking about, AI can do a pretty good job of being personalized. In fact, a lot of experts that say that AI is really, really good. That's one of the strengths, of being able to responses and personalized conversations for each individual. But I think a lot of times it's not just personal service, but it's just good service. It's just timely service. It's the kind of the service that you would expect if you walked into a tour operator in the 90s and started having a conversation, and you figured out your trip and booked your trip via conversation.
So I guess I'm curious, so when a tour, and I can completely understand how a tour operator could come to that objection, because they're very proud of the fact that they offer specialized service. I get that. That's
absolutely.
It's part of their identity, especially as a small tour operator, outbound, inbound, whatever. So I get that. And then I'm like, okay, so what are the options? If you really feel like we need to give personalized service, the options are have a form, complete this form, which is a generic form that asks you questions that are completely irrelevant to your situation. Or not enough questions to really figure out anything. And then we'll get back to you in a day or two. Alternative B would be to hire somebody, to have somebody on call with their phone in their pocket, ready to respond anytime somebody goes onto the website and says, yes, I want to have a conversation with an agent. That agent might be at the dinner table with their family, whatever, middle of the night. And what kind of quality? I mean, do you have a team of really high performers that all are willing to take calls in the middle of the night? Probably not. So you're probably hiring somebody that's new that is willing to do that. Or
on the other side of the world that doesn't know your business.
Yeah, exactly. Or have a trained AI assistant, because I think there's a difference. A trained AI assistant that's familiar with your business that 80% of the time is going to do a pretty good job. 90%, maybe more. I don't know. Let's say 80% of the time they're like, man, spot on. Because you know what? Real people don't do much better than that.
That's right.
You call me in the middle of the night, I'm probably not going to do an 80% excellent job. It's probably going to be a little lower. So you've got an AI assistant that is trained and sometimes they're like, geez, the AI assistant might get it wrong, but they're like, but if they're trained to say, you know what, I'm not sure, but I'm going to help connect you with somebody that can answer it.
Yeah.
That you've gone a hell of a lot further than just fill out a form. So, I mean, that's kind of the answer, right? To overcome that objection?
Yeah. I don't
know. I'm just curious.
I would hope so. I'm not sure how to completely answer the objection satisfactorily because it's not a person, but what we do try to do is emulate, the same type of service that your human agents give, and give the AI assistants the knowledge that your human assistants do, which it can be challenging, but at least they understand your entire website. You can upload your documents, policies, pre-trip packing lists, et cetera, so that the AI assistant has a knowledge, and then you can give it a lot of direction and a personality and style so that it somewhat mimics the way that your human.
And I'm envisioning the assistant, as the term implies, assistant is really to help the people handling the sales, to help the operations team, the sales team, not replace them. Because I think that's not, I can see where somebody might be like, no, we offer personalized service. They're imagining like the grocery store where they used to have lanes that you'd get in line and you'd wait and you'd have a conversation with somebody as you're paying for your stuff. And they fired all the cashiers and now they have a bunch of automated checkouts. I mean, maybe there's opportunities to reduce workforce, but the idea is to have the assistant. You're going to have more sales, more travelers, more opportunity to hire more team members to scale it, right? We mentioned the word scaling earlier. And your team, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if I was a new salesperson on a team that had an AI assistant, I feel like I could use the AI assistant as well, right? Like, absolutely. I don't know everything. I could probably go right to the AI assistant and say, hey, I'm working with a client that wants this, this, and that. So it seems like it would help on both sides, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One configuration of our assistants is just that as a co-pilot for trip planners. So it's not a public facing bot, but an internal tool where people say, yeah, help me make an itinerary of, 5 days with these different things, this budget. And really facilitates the work of the person. And so, I get to talk, to a lot of small business owners and CEOs, and I almost always encourage them to not think of this at all by AI as a cost saving measure. Definitely think of it as a way to provide a better experience to your users, a better travel experience in general, from the time they see an ad to their first contact with your company to actually, making the sale, traveling, and the follow-ups, that the entire process can be enhanced and improved.
So I bet a traveler that's getting ready to get off the airplane in Bogota, Colombia, could probably go on their phone. They've got the app. They're connected with their tour operator. They probably say, hey, remind me, who's picking me up, right? And or hey, what's the phone number of the person that's supposed to be picking me up? And AI can just do all that stuff at 9:00 on a Friday night. And anybody that's worked in the travel business for any amount of time knows how cool that would be. If your client did run into an issue, that they could get an answer right away without you calling. Because I worked in the business long enough that I know sometimes you come in Monday morning and there's an email sitting in your inbox from a guest that was traveling on Saturday, and they're like, hey, the driver's not here. And now it's Monday morning. Oops. And I'm like, oh man, oh no. Why didn't they call the number that was in their trip planner? Why did they send me an email? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? And a lot of those things can be avoided. Number one. Number two, the other thing that came up for me when you're discussing that was, again, anybody that's worked as part of a team in the travel industry has had the newer associate, the newer person on the team that sits right next to them, maybe back before COVID when we used to actually sit in the same office. But you've got your junior trip planner sitting next to you, and they get an inquiry and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start because they haven't done this one yet. So it's every 5 minutes. Hey, Jason, how long is the layover here? What is this? What is that? And you're spending so much time answering questions that are in your database in your head or are in the website or are in your notes. But this new associate doesn't know where to go look for them. And wouldn't that be great if they could run past run stuff past the AI. Hey, like quit asking me, ask Amelia or whoever our chatbot is. And then I can review it maybe at the end, just, whatever. But I see a lot of opportunities that I wish I'd had 15 years ago when I had team members sitting next to me asking those questions. So
yeah, there are a lot of studies about, how AI is impacting different roles in businesses. And one of the overriding tendencies is that younger, less experienced people can really get a lot more benefit. It can really help them to perform at a much higher level, level of their bosses. And so, yeah, absolutely. It gives trip planners, I guess, superpowers in some ways. They always have their knowledgeable coworker sitting right next to them.
Yeah, because most of the time, as I recall, in my experiences, most of the time, the information that my colleague was trying to get was written down somewhere. It was in a trip planner document. It was in an itinerary somewhere. It was somewhere in the reservation system. It was somewhere on the website, but it was a challenge. They weren't sure where. So they would say, maybe their question is, Jason, where do I find this? I know it's in the document somewhere, but where do I find it? And that's where AI is really, really helpful, because AI, your assistants have already read, categorized everything in the written documentation, so that when the associate's like, how long can you stay in Thailand without a visa? AI can respond to that really quickly, much better than going to Google and trying to figure out which document's the most updated, because your AI assistant's pulling from your documents that you've already kind of vetted, right? Is that kind of how it works?
Exactly. Exactly. Our AI assistants, they run, and it's getting a little bit technical here, but it's called retrieval augmented generation. So so what it means is when you speak to a chatbot, instead of going to, say, OpenAI or ChatGPT, it's going actually to this database of all of your documents and of your website that's inside of an AI database, and so you retrieve in your chat, you retrieve information from your database, and it's not like invented by ChatGPT. So
which I'm happy you mentioned that word, because I think that's a lot of it. People, their experience or what they've heard about AI is ChatGPT just makes stuff up, or it pulls from unverifiable sources, and you have no idea where the information came from. But in your case, you're really narrowing it down to what you give it to work with, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Technically, It's called a context. All of this documentation about, who your business is, all of your policies, and all the information, it draws from that and then augments that retrieval of information with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, to put it in like a conversational format. So it can ask, well, what should I pack on my trip to the Galapagos Islands? And then it may say, well, what time of the year are you going to go? And so it can dig down and find, the correct answer.
If you're traveling in January, your documents might say, if you're traveling in January, make sure you take mud boots or something, just example. Yeah. But then I suspect also it can then go augment that with saying the average temperature in the Galapagos in January is X. And that might not be in your documents anywhere, but it's relevant. It's, I don't know. I mean, is that kind of how that works when you talk about augmentation?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, if you configure the assistant, so say if you don't find the answer in your documents, then you can go either look for it on the internet as one option, or you can go to the large language model. You can go to ChatGPT and try to get an answer from there. But the problem with going directly to the language model is what's known as hallucinations. And so, you have to kind of understand that these large language models are taking the entire corpus of the internet, so every word that's been written on the internet, and they're kind of compressing it down, like the essential knowledge and the logic and the reasoning, into something that can fit onto a hard drive, like onto your computer hard drive. Mm-hmm. And so when you kind of decompress that, you lose a lot of facts and small details, and so that's where a lot of the hallucinations come in. Is it kind of has to, it really wants to, tell you what you want to hear. It really wants to do a good job for you. So it does tell you what you want to hear. And if it doesn't actually have that fact in its memory, although it doesn't have exactly memory, then it will make up something.
Just kind of to fill in the gaps, really. What I'm hearing is just to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, exactly. And so really the way that you avoid that is to, when you're asking a question, that you get your information, factual information from a Google search or from your company documents, and not from the large language model directly.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is why, because I've come across and seen a couple things, like I'm on YouTube way more than I should be, and I see like, oh, create your own assistant, create your own chatbot, and it's like an 8-minute video, but it's like everything. There's a lot more to it than that. I've also seen a lot of things, make a free website, in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something that, it's a perception thing, but part of the things that have come up in this conversation, why it's important to have it trained correctly. And because you don't want it operating at 20%. It doesn't really help to have a quick conversation with all your website visitors if it's a really bad conversation. So what do you want to say about kind of the importance of hiring the right person or doing it the right way, whether it's you or somebody else? I mean,
I think your analogy to, here's a free website builder. I'll go in and build my own website is a really good one. Some people may be able to do that well, but most people will find that they make a kind of a crappy website. And so I think the same thing, it happens if you, go and find, a free or low cost, make your own chatbot for your company. It'll probably.
Well, the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. If you've never built a website and everybody's telling you, oh yeah, there's places you can go and build a website for free, then you're like, okay, well, why would I pay thousands of dollars for somebody to build a website when I keep hearing, I don't have the time and energy to go do it, but I keep hearing that I can do it for free. So I'm reluctant to pay somebody else to do it, even though I don't want to spend the time to do it. But it just sets a benchmark for what you think a website should be worth. But then anybody that has actually built decent websites, good websites, or worked in marketing realizes, oh yeah, that's, you technically can build a website for free. But actually having it do what you want it to do and maintaining it and keeping up with it and all that stuff is a whole nother level. And I know like a lot of these tour operators that you're working with, they're, kind of leery about having someone out there that's not representing them well. So we need to, I imagine that's part of overcoming that objection with them, as well as how do we make sure that the chatbot is kind of acting like somebody on their staff. So how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's really a matter of a lot of testing. And so we've even set up an entire testing platform, where we create an AI assistant, a separate AI assistant that poses as a typical client of a company and has given a goal to say, purchase or schedule a trip for one of the products this company is selling. And then it actually goes and has a conversation with our AI, or it could be other AIs or other people even in theory, and goes through the process of trying to accomplish something, be it booking a trip or finding out a piece of key information they need to plan their trip. And so that way we can really simulate many, like even thousands or hundreds of thousands of different situations, of different types of clients that have different questions and needs. And we can really, really test the assistant then under many different conditions. And then we have another AI assistant, which is a chat critic, who goes back and they analyze the transcripts of each of the chat and grades the AI assistant on how well it's responded to the person's questions, how well it's facilitated the person to be able to accomplish their goals. Yeah, and
go ahead.
And so from there we kind of grade grade the system's performance and then give feedback, to our developers and eventually, to the AI system itself of how to self-improve.
I don't know if you let it slip out, if it came out, or if it's just part of your normal conversation here. But as I was listening to you, I heard you say it has a conversation with our chatbot or another chatbot or even a person. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's exactly what you said. But what came up there was what I'm hearing you say is you could take your secret shopper chatbot and have it engage with a real person and then have your critic evaluate that conversation as well, couldn't you?
Yeah, you can.
Ooh. I'm sure there's companies thinking about this stuff, but I'm thinking if you've got a call center, you could also do it with voice transcripts, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Or you could have a secret shopper that's an AI secret shopper, engages with a real person, and then the system evaluates that call and looks for areas of improvement. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. You can also do the same thing with existing call transcripts or chats or even email histories as well, and analyze how well did this salesperson attend to the needs of the traveler. Yeah.
Wow. I've worked in sales in a few different roles, and I remember at one point it was, we're recording all the calls so we can go back and listen to the calls. It was a lot of pressure, honestly. It was like, I don't really want my bosses listening to my calls because I know I screw things up. Everybody does. Or I shouldn't say screw things up, but there's always areas for improvement, no matter how good you are. And we all have our own ideas about how things should be done. And I'm imagining if I'm an employee sitting there in a sales role, or consulting role, and I've got AI is going to go evaluate every conversation I have, every text I have, like probably a good thing, but most people are going to have a hard time getting their head around being judged and critiqued by AI. But it's actually really interesting. That's a whole nother conversation though, isn't it?
Yeah. First it starts off as AI critics and then eventually they become your boss. And so then we're really in trouble.
Yeah. My sales manager is a chatbot. Yeah. It's, but there's so many uses, right? That really benefit the entire team and the client. Okay. But that's a rabbit hole. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to touch on with that?
So I guess it's quite a rabbit hole. But yeah, our intention is to really give tools to tour operators that are going to help them automate and improve really each step of the process and the entire traveler life cycle, from the very first time they see a marketing an ad to clicking on the landing page. It's going to be all personalized in the future, and for a market of one person. So you'll be receiving emails that were and marketing materials and even website contents that were created just for you and kind of designed to help to motivate you to purchase the product.
Which brings us back around to earlier where you're speaking about, some of your potential clients have this, we really like to personalize everyone, to personalize. And what I hear you saying is through the use of some of these tools, you can actually personalize things a lot better than you can with obviously a form. We talked about a form, but also just kind of those automated emails when someone fills out the form and they get an email back. Oh, thanks for connecting with us. Those are really hard to personalize other than maybe a name. Dear Mike, hey, it was great hearing from you. We look, but that's a lot of work to customize an email without AI. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, almost impossible. Say, like you're saying, like an autoresponder that comes from a form. Yeah, very difficult. But with AI now, it's not that difficult. You can ask follow-up questions and other. Yeah, the types of follow-up questions that a real trip planner, human trip planner would ask, if they were attending the email.
And I suspect with your chatbots and just all these different things, you could actually probably even demo that because some companies do have live people that are responding. You go on a website and the box pops up and you've got a live agent. They're having a conversation with you, and it would be interesting to see a side by side of that, because I've had enough live conversations, frankly, with people on websites. Yeah, it's a person, but I don't know about you, but I always get the feeling that they're having 5 or 6 conversations at once,
Yeah. I think
They ask me a question, I respond to the question, and then I wait and I wait and I wait.
Yeah.
And then they come back. And then 3 or 4 messages down, they're asking me the same question I just answered 2 or 3 questions earlier because they've got so many different conversations going on.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of it and they say, okay, is there anything else I can help you with today? And I'm like, you didn't even help me with what we started with, and it gets frustrating. And I suspect a well-trained chatbot be a lot more responsive, a lot quicker, and maybe more relevant, less likely to forget where they are in the conversation. And that would be an interesting side by side, wouldn't it, to demonstrate?
Yeah, you can test that with AI.
Yeah. So there is so much stuff. It's like, I actually imagine that's probably one of the challenges working with this stuff is staying focused on kind of core products, because I'm sure every day you come up with 5 or 6 new ideas of different ways you can use the tool. And at some point you just got to take action and move forward, right?
Yeah. Like you said, you have to come back and say, focus, because there's 1,001 things that you could do, and AI, enables you to do them relatively easier than before. But you still have to focus and keep
that would be my challenge. I think my ADHD is a little bit too active for me to sit down and say, okay, this is my goal today. And it's, I get pulled in a lot of different directions. And especially every time I go into, ChatGPT or any sort of AI thing, it's like, it's for me, it's great ideas. It's a really good idea source when I go there, and it turns me on to things that I didn't even think of. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, how do I do this? And it comes back and says, well, there's 3 or 4 different ways.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, ooh, the third way, I never would have thought of that. And now I feel you start making associations between things. And after a long full day, I totally forgot what I was working on and what I was really trying to accomplish. And I've created a whole nother project. And, especially with website, I do a fair amount of website design and some copywriting stuff. And it's, I get distracted. So anyway, Jason, we've discussed a bunch of things about you personally. And actually, one of the things I wanted to mention about your story is interesting because I'm going to use the word a little tech nerdy. I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's a positive thing, right? You're kind of a little bit of a tech nerd, but you're also competitive bicycle racer, climber, guide, naturalist, all these things that you've done. I think I've spoken with a lot of people, and I don't see that interesting mix very often of somebody that really has his chops in tourism, adventure tourism, just travel in general, as well as on that tech side. So I would imagine that kind of puts you in a unique spot when you're having conversations with your clients.
Yeah, that's kind of the job that I've made for myself, as being the travel tech expert. And so, my job to keep up with the latest things that are happening, and hopefully able to guide my clients and my company in the right direction as far as technology goes.
Yeah, I've been following you for a while, and it seems like you're getting a great response. And I haven't been following you for 27 years. I suspect you've had great response for all of those years, and it's real fun to kind of watch and communicate with you as you go through this stuff. Jason, is there anything else that I should have asked, forgot to ask, or that you want to make sure our listeners know about you, your business, AI in general, travel in general? Is there anything that we did not touch on that you want to make sure we do touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've got most of everything. Just if people want to get in touch with me, they can find me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique name, Jason Halberstadt. There's only a couple of us, but both of us lived in Boulder, Colorado. So I'm the one that's now works in travel. And please find me on LinkedIn and connect, and let's continue the conversation.
And we'll have your website linked in the show notes as well.
Great.
So I'd encourage anybody that's listening to this that's interested in kind of what's going on in that space. Jason's a great resource. I love that you mentioned LinkedIn, because you do post some really useful information and articles there as well. So I think anybody that's remotely interested should at least follow you on LinkedIn. But better yet, reach out. I've had a few conversations with you, and it's been really, really super interesting. So thank you so much for joining me today, sharing some of your time with our listeners, and I appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you, Jason. It's really, really been a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to keeping talking.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.